Thank you, everybody, for joining with us to discuss green infrastructure investment opportunities in Indonesia. So this report is the first in a series of publications that aim to educate investors about the scale of green infrastructure pipelines around the world and facilitate engagement between these investors and the owners and developers of the green infrastructure. Government agencies are also part of this engagement, and one of our key partners in developing this report was the Indonesian government's non-budget financing scheme, referred to as PINA. So we would like to thank PINA, along with the consulting group EBA Indonesia, for their insights and contributions. We would also like to thank the Asian Development Bank, the Global Green Growth Institute, and the IFC's Edge Buildings team for their contributions. Developing this report was important as Indonesia is one of the fastest growing emerging markets and the fourth most populous country in the world. This rapid growth has improved living standards, but has also seen environmental degradation and an increase in Indonesia's vulnerability to the impacts of climate change. In response to these challenges, the government is beginning to turn to green infrastructure. So this will allow them to achieve more positive environmental and economic benefits as compared to traditional infrastructure. And Indonesia's President, Joko Widodo, aims to deliver $400 billion worth of new public works projects by the end of next year. And this is in the sectors of transportation, energy, water, and waste. It is estimated that the state budget should cover about 63% of this amount, with 37% expected to come from development partners and capital markets. So this represents about $150 billion worth of investment required. Indonesia is well positioned to attract investment, thankfully. Last year, strong macroeconomic performance delivered investment-grade sovereign ratings from the major international credit rating agencies. There were also record high foreign exchange reserves and the largest net inflow of foreign direct investment in over 7 years. Positive outcomes like this are set to continue, with GDP growth expected to rise to 5.4% this year and up to 5.5% next year. And looking forward, interest rates will remain stable or will continue to trend downwards, and inflation should remain within the government's target corridor. So this healthy fiscal environment is, as you imagine, not only attractive for investors, but also represents the ideal conditions for the government and private sector to lock in better debt conditions through refinancing of outstanding loans. Understand this opportunity, the government is pushing for reforms to enable and encourage foreign investment. Some of their changes have included streamlining approval and procurement procedures specifically for infrastructure projects. They've also removed barriers for foreign currency denominated government bonds, as well as opening up direct lending to state-owned enterprises. So in Indonesia, state-owned enterprises are often the developers or owners of public infrastructure. The government has also improved and is continuing to improve their public-private partnership regulations, and they are providing more subsidies, sovereign guarantees, gap viability funding, and availability payments, all to reduce any risks associated with large infrastructure projects. The government is also partnering with key development finance institutions to provide blended finance instruments and other such credit enhancement mechanisms. But in these partnerships, we should note that the focus of any of this financing is on promoting projects that are specifically supporting the Sustainable Development Goals, so more green infrastructure than traditional infrastructure. Since the signing of the Paris Agreement, there has been an increasing demand from institutional investors, particularly from OECD nations and China for investment opportunities that address the Sustainable Development Goals. And this growing interest is resulting in an increase in dedicated green financial products, including green bonds. And for example, the global green bond market has seen exponential growth, reaching $160.8 billion US worth of issuance in 2017, which was up 85% from the year before, which is very impressive. And this growth has been for green bonds occurring in Southeast Asia, where Indonesia is located. So we specifically have data on ASEAN, so the 10 member countries of ASEAN, and there have been several landmark deals within this region which have actually set global precedents. So, for example, the world's first green sukuk was issued in Malaysia in June 2017 by a renewable energy and sustainable technology company. The use of proceeds for this green sukuk will comply with Sharia principles and will fund a 500 megawatt solar project in the coastal city of Kudat. And since this particular green sukuk was released, there have actually been 4 further green sukuk deals in Southeast Asia, which have contributed to a total of 12 green bonds from the region, 6 of which were actually issued in this year alone. One of the green bonds that were issued in this year was the historic green sukuk issued by Indonesia. So this was a sovereign, and it is the world's first sovereign green sukuk. To give you some details, the initial guidance for this was an amount of $500 million to $1 billion US with a coupon of 4.05%. And the deal was actually hugely oversubscribed, and ultimately it was upsized to $1.25 billion US and was priced very favorably at 3.75%. And the proceeds raised from the placement will go to multiple projects with eligible categories such as renewable energy, public transport, low carbon buildings, water and waste management, and green tourism. So it can be seen that the promotion of green infrastructure, which these projects qualify as in Indonesia, this presents more opportunities for green bond issuance and could help to attract more private capital from overseas. And it is for this reason that we developed this report in partnership with our Indonesian stakeholders. So to give you some background, together we identified a selection of Indonesia's infrastructure assets and projects that best aligned with both international definitions of green and represented the types of green investment opportunities available in Indonesia. These projects can be categorized into 5 key sectors, being transport, energy, waste management, water management, and the built environment. So what we will do is we don't have enough time to take you through all of the projects, but we will go through each of the sectors, giving a very, very brief introduction, giving you an idea of the types of projects available, and then we will feature one of these projects. But it won't just be me talking. I'll be joined by some of our partners and contributors from Indonesia to explore each of these opportunities, and I will introduce them as we come to the projects. So the first one is transport, and improving connectivity is a critical priority for President Widodo. His administration has set some ambitious targets for transport, and this includes building 3,200 kilometers of train tracks through the islands of Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, and Sulawesi. So unsurprisingly, some of the green transport investment opportunities that we identified for this year and next year were dominated by rail. They also included bus rapid transport related projects, which exist across the country. So we have one example of green transport investment of an investment opportunity being the urban railway project in the city of Medan in northern Sumatra. So I would like to introduce Mr. Yudi Ismail from EBA Indonesia. He is the President Director, and I would invite you, Yudi, to briefly introduce yourself and to provide the details of this green transport project. Thank you, Yudi.
Hi, thank you. My name is Yudi Ismail from EBA Indonesia. And EBA Indonesia has been working with CBI and PINA. PINA is the underarms of Bappenas. So we promote all the infrastructure project in Indonesia, especially to issue a green bond. A specific railway project, for example, in city of Medan. Medan is in North Sumatra. I think is the third largest city in Indonesia. So the railway will be built like 19.2 kilometers long, and this will improve accessibility and connectivity and reduce congestion and air pollution. You know, most of the cities in Indonesia now is very packed, and the traffic is congested. So all the cities are now trying to build this kind of project, railway, in almost all big cities. The cost of the project in Medan is 477 million US, and concession is 35 years. And this will be working with the local government, local development planning authority, city of Medan. Financial structure will be private, public, and partnership. It is government support, and will be kind of guarantee also. Return on investment and available payment is proposed for project investment in 10 to 15 years, with an user tariff scheme afterwards, fare box and non-fare box revenue, such as transit-oriented development in the station, also possible source of revenue. I think that's from me. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Yudi. So before we move on to the next sector, I want to point out that as a part of our research, we also identified priorities for investment beyond next year, because looking at these sorts of things can help Indonesia to better make the transition to a low-carbon society. So for green transport, these future investment opportunities included further projects in rail and bus rapid transit development, as well as the generation of the production of electric vehicle generation and sustainable waterborne transport. So we'll now move on to energy. And again, to give you some background, in last year, renewable energy generation represented 14% of the total energy mix in Indonesia. This was dominated by hydropower and geothermal power generation, but there were other sources of renewable energy. These were solar and wind power, as well as bioenergy. And at the moment, the government is also pursuing tidal power technology, although this is not yet up and feeding into the grid. So looking forward for the next couple of years, the projects that we identified were within these particular types of energy generation. And we would like to invite Yudi again to actually speak about one of these, which is an interesting geothermal project. It is the, I'm probably not going to pronounce this properly, the Wayang Windu geothermal plant in West Java. So thank you, Yudi, if you could please just tell us a bit more about that project.
Okay, thank you very much. As you may know that Indonesia is I think it's the second largest in the world to have geothermal energy. So we have very big potential in geothermal. One of those is Wayang Windu geothermal plant in West Java. It's already built. They're gonna have an extension plan also. One of the largest geothermal station in Indonesia, generating like 277 megawatts. A third unit of 127 megawatt is planned for construction, and further units are also being considered. It is one of the first geothermal power plant operators in Indonesia to have an integrated control system with zero venting to reduce emission. Output increase energy supply to Java, Madura, and Bali, and more environmentally friendly energy production. The cost is estimated about $450 million US. I think the concession could be more than 30 years. Asset owner authority is owned by Pertamina Magma Nusantara Limited, or this is the subsidiary of Star Energy. Star Energy, as you may know, is belong to one of our conglomerate, Prayogo Pangestu, with a joint operating contract with Pertamina Geothermal Energy. Financial structures is the same, public-private partnership with financial support from the government. Return on investment, build, own, and operate, take or pay features, PPA with PLN. And Star Energy already issue a green bond listed in Singapore, I think. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you again, Yudi. So beyond 2019, we found that some of the best investment opportunities should focus on solar power, wind power, bioenergy, and continue to emphasize geothermal power generation. And this is based on the fact that these particular modes have the greatest potential for energy generation in Indonesia. So on to water management. So one of the greatest challenges for the Indonesian government and municipal authorities has been the provision of clean drinking water across the archipelago. For example, only 10% of the nation's total water is available to almost 60% of the population who live in Java. So the types of assets that would be available for investment in Indonesia in the next couple of years would be, unsurprisingly, related to water supply and treatment facilities. But because we're looking at green infrastructure, we're talking about those facilities that are most sustainable and resilient to climate change. So I will hand you over to Yudi again to please present to us the Bandar Lampung water supply facility. Thank you, Yudi.
Thank you. Bandar Lampung water supply. Lampung is in South Sumatra. It's just across the Java island. So it is planned, and the distribution of service component of larger water supply project with the level of services expected to increase from 20% in 2015 to 46% in 2024. The output will be sustainable access to safe drinking water. The estimated cost will be like 81.48 million US. Concession period will be 25 years. The owner will be, this is the local regional government owned, PDAM Way Rilau, Bandar Lampung City. Again, financial structure will be public-private partnership. Will be a local government support and guarantee. And a return on investment, build, operate, and transfer scheme. Again, a lot of cities in Indonesia also will have the same kind of project with maybe bigger size, especially like Jakarta, Surabaya, and Medan. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Yudi. So beyond 2019, the investment opportunities will likely be around water infrastructure upgrades that promote resilience and the development of more low-emission wastewater treatment facilities. And for waste management, so regards to waste, currently 69% of the estimated 64 million tons of solid waste produced by Indonesians per year is sent to open landfill, which, as you can imagine, might have some negative effects on the health and environment of the local communities nearby. Fully aware of this, the government has responded with a comprehensive waste management scheme that focuses on waste recycling and with a strong emphasis actually on waste-to-energy facilities. So there are many projects upcoming that are for these types of facilities, one of which is in West Java, and I invite Yudi again to speak to us about this interesting waste-to-energy project.
Okay, thank you. Again, big cities in Indonesia like Jakarta and Bandung, we have a problem with waste. So government really want to build this kind of facility as soon as possible. So the waste in Legok Nangka, which is in West Java, this is actually for Bandung city's final waste. The waste disposal facility is 2,000 ton per day maximum input, and output is electricity production of 340,000 kilowatt per day, and 90 tons per day of compost using full gasification. The output is reduced to total waste in West Java. Estimated cost will be 43.73 million US dollar. The concession will be 20 years. It can be extended. Asset owner is government of West Java province. A financial structure will be triple P, public-private partnership, will be government support and guarantee also. This will be a BOT scheme, power purchase agreement with PLN. As I would like to add it also that the only waste disposal management have the presidential decree, what you call a presidential decree. So government already set like to buy the electricity from the waste is about 13.5 cents if the electricity produced 20 megawatt, below 20 megawatt. Above 20 megawatts, the government sets 14.5 cents to US dollar per kilowatt. This is the only presidential decree from the president. Other energy producer they don't have. So you have the other renewable energy. You have to deal directly to PLN. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Yudi. That's very interesting. Thank you. So looking beyond 2019, investment opportunities will likely focus on recycling and these waste-to-energy facilities. So it should be noted that whilst waste-to-energy technology, it's an ideal solution to the growing waste management challenge, it also needs to be considered a low-emission technology. So this is only possible when the waste used has been sorted, and it doesn't include plastics or metals. So that's how it can be qualifying as a green infrastructure. So for the built environment, in this report, we considered green buildings as well as elements of the urban landscape that were sustainable and resilient, such as sustainable street lighting, to comprise the built environment. But we certainly emphasize green buildings more so. This is because the first Indonesian Green Buildings Regulation was released in 2012, and this has been requiring the construction of environmentally friendly buildings across the country for the last 6 years. So green building and green built environment investment opportunities in Indonesia available this year and next year include the development or the refinancing of World Bank Group's, the World Bank Group's EDGE certified or the local Indonesian Green Ship certified buildings. There's also a low carbon street lighting project. And an example green building investment opportunity is the Daan Mago Towers in Jakarta, specifically Towers 3 to 7. And we have Sandra Pranoto from EDGE Buildings here today to briefly discuss this project and the EDGE Buildings program in Indonesia. Thank you, Sandra.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So, hi guys, my name is Sandra Pranoto from IFC Indonesia International Finance Corporation. So we are basically private sector arm of the World Bank Group. And we've been working with government since 2011 on green buildings. So we work with government, the national government, as well as sub-national governments, providing policy recommendations and also support on the code implementation. So Jakarta, the code that Christian mentioned before in 2012 was the Jakarta Green Building Code. It was the first in the country. It was followed by the national code and as well as Bandung, and now we're working with Semarang. So we're also working with government on the national roadmap on green buildings. So this roadmap is necessary because, as you know, all these codes are basically mandatory. So if buildings don't comply with these requirements in the code, so they will not get the construction permit. And then in the future, they will not also get the occupancy permit for existing buildings. So far from the code, we have more than 18 million square meters, or more than 500 buildings that actually complied with the code already. We also been working with private sectors, understanding what the issues for them in, getting their buildings to be green. And we understand that one of the issues is actually not having, practical tools for them to identify what kind of, green building measures that they can include in their buildings, and then how much the cost, and then also how much the savings that they will get. So because of that, then, IFC created this practical and affordable green building tools and certifications. We call it EDGE. And then these EDGE certifications are tools. You can get it for free, actually, not certification, sorry, the tools. You can use it for free. You just go to the website, which is www.edgebuildings.com. You can, and we have only 3 standards actually, which are the energy, materials, and embedded energy, materials, and water. You just have to meet those 3 standards, minimum 20%, and you're eligible to get the certification. But in order for you to get the certification, then you need to contact our local partner, which is Green Building Council Indonesia. So far, we have more than 60 projects that's registered with these certifications. 30 projects already certified, or more than 5,000 housing units, including these housing units that we have on the slide, which is the Mogot Towers. This is an interesting project because this is actually a government, Jakarta government project. So this is Rusunawa. They see that they want to be an example for other cities. So not only that they have the first green building code in the country, but they also would like to have this project, the Rusunawa project, to be certified with international green building certification, which is EDGE. So we work with the city, and then hopefully, other cities will also have their Rusunawa projects to be certified. In terms of the growth of the green buildings, we see that it could be as high as 20 to 25% of the market in 2025, because we did a combination of policy support, tax benefits, educational awareness programs, and also realized savings from energy efficiency. And we also think that the overall percentage of new green buildings is expected to increase by 2 to 5% steadily every year, at least until 2030. So we see a lot of improvements, a lot of increase in the number of green buildings from certifications, as well as from buildings that comply with the code. So IFC itself, we provide some financial support, either credit guarantee loans, also to green developers and financial institutions in Indonesia and globally. So that's it from me.
Thank you very much. Beyond 2019, some of the investments we identified were obviously continuing with the promotion of green buildings, but also looking at other ways of bringing green, if you will, into the built environment. So we actually want to highlight a second project that we think represents the future of sustainable buildings as well as renewable energy in Indonesia. So to do this, we have Jessie Juliana from the Global Green Growth Institute to tell us about their small-scale solar PV project and the work that her organization is doing in Indonesia. Thank you, Jessie.
Thank you, Christian. So before I talk about the Mandalika project, let me first briefly introduce Global Green Growth Institute, or GGI. So GGI is a treaty-based international intergovernment organization which is supporting and promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth in developing countries as well as emerging economies. GGI member countries its establishment in 2012 now has reached to 28 member countries. In Indonesia, GGI started its operation in 2013 and under the leadership of the Ministry for National and Development Planning, or Bappenas, have been working to develop strategies and approaches for green growth through a program called Government of Indonesia and GGI Green Growth Program. So the program has completed its first phase, which focused on mainstreaming green growth into planning and as well as recommending policy to the government. One of the deliverables, for example, we have developed together with Bappenas a National Green Growth Roadmap. Currently, we are in the second phase of the Green Growth Program. Now, in the second phase, we focus on investment. We will support Government of Indonesia in increasing inclusive green growth investment in priority sectors in line with our thematic area of our GGI thematic area, like energy, forest and land use, and green infrastructure within special economic zones. To achieve this increasing investment, we also collaborate with other technical ministries, like Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, and of course with Ministry of Environment and Forestry. This is why we support the development of renewable energy projects in Indonesia, and one of them is the solar PV development in Mandalika. So Mandalika is located in the Lombok Island, which is next to Bali Island. This is going to be an exciting opportunities of tourism business in Indonesia. So GGI, together with PT Sarana Multi Infrastructure or PT SME, support the Indonesia Tourism Development Corporation or ITDC. ITDC as the operator of Mandalika Special Economic Zone. Their vision is to develop ecotourism in Mandalika, in the Mandalika SEZ. So we, GGI and PT SMI, jointly conducted a feasibility study of this solar PV project. The study covering aspects such as technical, financial, legal, and social and environmental. So according to the study, the capacity of the first phase development of the project is estimated around 10 megawatts. Meanwhile, ITDC estimate a power requirement of about 25 megawatts in the special economic zone, in the Mandalika zone, to serve around 1,500 rooms of large hotel chains and other associated utilities in around next 2 years. In the next year, some of the hotel may be already operational. However, the SPV, the financial structure, and other detail of this project is still under discussion. So in this project, we hope that the development of solar PV in economic zones can be a demonstration project. Hopefully, it can be potentially scaled up within the zone and replicated in other special economic zones in Indonesia. Indonesia has 12 special economic zones today. That is for me. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So of all the green assets and projects that we have identified altogether, CBI and our partners, in the report, we included a selection of 38 of these, and we showcase these in a pipeline of green infrastructure investment opportunities for 2018-2019. So these are actually indicated here on the map by location. We thought that the table was just a little bit long. So you can hear they're quite spread across the archipelago. And so these include the projects that we've highlighted through the sectors here in the webinar. But to give you an idea, you know, the other projects range from a $15 million distributed solar project up to a $6 billion light rail development. So offering investors a wide range of options. And the largest share of these 38 opportunities related to low carbon transport. So as I mentioned, with an emphasis on rail and bus rapid transit developments, as well as renewable energy. So there were a lot of projects that focused on low emissions geothermal and hydropower generation facilities. So I think you'll agree that these projects show that Indonesia is making great progress in transitioning to a low-carbon society, and they have the strong political support, a facilitative policy framework, and improving macroeconomic conditions, which allow for, which I think will allow for the opportunities in green infrastructure investment to continue to grow. So I will now hand it over to Sean and Yudi to close with a few words about the future of green infrastructure investment in Indonesia. I'll go to you first, Sean. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I have a bit of difficulty. Okay.
We can hear you.
Thank you. We have a huge challenge to address climate emission change, to address CO2 emissions, and to address climate resilience around the world. Not only do we have to renovate our existing economies in OECD countries, but we also have to ensure that the future for rapidly growing emerging markets, and Indonesia is absolutely one of those, that future is green. Yes, we need to work on deforestation, but most of future emissions are coming from urban development, are coming from economic growth, and if that economic growth and urban development isn't green, there is no chance of meeting our global climate change ambitions under the Paris Agreement. While we've identified a few key green infrastructure investments here, we know there need to be a lot more. The point of the report is to show that there are substantive and substantial green investments coming through from Indonesia. For those $70 trillion of investor asset managements that have expressed a keenness and enthusiasm to address the challenge of climate change, there is opportunity with a green focus within Indonesia. There's no need for us to focus our energies on the investments of the past, coal, gas, road infrastructure for fossil fuels. We can focus our limited funds, large as they are, on infrastructure that will address climate change and build a more productive Indonesia. Traffic in Jakarta and other cities will be a lot easier to navigate with a very good transport system, which is low carbon infrastructure, as Yudi was suggesting earlier. This is going to be an annual process. We will continue to promote green infrastructure in the area. Of course, there have been challenges investing in Indonesia in the past. We've seen extraordinary volatility over the last 30 years, not just because of Indonesia, more because of macroeconomic circumstance on the planet, but for investors it's been a challenge. However, I think, Yudi, things are really changing in Indonesia. We've seen an investment grade rating, we've seen sustained growth, we've seen political stability. Are you confident about the future at the moment? What's the mood from your perspective? Can you hear me, Yudi?
Yes, Son. I can hear you. Yes, I'm very positive with the economic growth in the future. Our economy in Indonesia is keep getting stronger. Our reserve is getting bigger, and government are also predicting that the development growth will be like above 5% next year. So everything is still very positive, and the only thing that we have to do is to invite all these international investors to invest in Indonesia, because when we get lower fund to finance the project, then there will be more development can be happening in Indonesia, because you know that local investors and local banks, even government spending is not, they are not enough to support the infrastructure development in Indonesia. We need international investors to come in to Indonesia.
So we have capital opportunity, but we have capital shortage. So we need to balance that with international flows.
Yes.
Until such time as Indonesia improves its domestic capital accumulation, which is happening, and that will happen in the next few years. But to get things moving, there are significant opportunities for international investors in the short term. We're ready to connect people with the projects outlined in this report through climate bonds initiatives and through EBA Indonesia. We are working with PINA, and PINA is a creature of Bappenas, the State Planning Ministry, and other bodies on the same principle. And then again with our partners at Global Green Growth Institutes and IFC's EDGE and Asian Development Bank, we have a very good mix of things to support people looking at this particular market. In the meantime, if you have any questions as a listener to this, please do contact us. Contact any of us via Climate Bonds Initiative. If you haven't got all the email addresses for you, they're easily found, but I'm always findable at Sean@climatebonds.net, and then we will connect you accordingly. Thank you, Desi, Sandra, and Yudi for having joined us in today's presentation. Thank you, Christian, for all the hard work in preparing the report and presenting today. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in the near future, and most importantly, for rivers of green capital to be flowing towards Indonesian projects. Thank you, everyone.